Todd, hey. Happy Wednesday. Ooh, audio. You're not on, oh, you're on mute on here.
Oh, sorry about that. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, thanks. I have 3 different times on my schedule. Is it 6 to 8:30? Is it 6:30 to 8:30?
It's 6:30 to 8:30 officially. I open this up at 6 so that people have a chance to get on and chat and get comfortable with being on. We'll get started at 6:30 though.
Okay.
You wouldn't mind, Todd, going in to rename yourself with your first and last, and you're invited to add your pronouns if you'd like. That's up to you.
I think I just need to put spaces between them.
Yeah, C. Todd Cummings. Yeah. Diana, welcome.
Diana, hello.
Todd, introductions here to Diana, or that's already a thing?
Oh, I do know Diana.
Yeah.
All right.
So Grant, I'm looking at the Miro board. And I'm looking for the schedule and everything that was up last time we chatted. Am I missing that?
I pulled it down. That was for us. Do you want me to send that to you?
You don't have to. It was just helpful to sort of have a play-by-play for tonight.
Let's see. Hey, Spark.
Hi, Leah.
Hi, Diana. How are you?
Okay, long time.
I know.
How's everything going?
It's going well. And you?
Pretty good, thanks.
Good.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
All right, Todd, right below the Wednesday session, I'm going to upload the kind of run of the night. We converted it from Post-it notes, like we had it, into like a slide.
Perfect. Hi, Sparky. Hi, Leah.
Hi, Todd. How are you?
Great, thank you.
Good.
See it there, Todd?
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah. We messed with the times a bit. Monday night, we had, or actually, no, we were talking about this. More people wanted more FaceTime with each other, so that's what we're definitely doing. But like we talked about in those small breakouts, I'll be jumping through to see that things are on the right path. Like we talked about.
Right.
So how do we access the Miro board? Or
I always throw it in the chat over here.
oh, okay.
Here is the link, and that'll open up another window on your machine in a web browser. Diana, it might have some pop-ups too of like, let's walk you through a demo or sign up. You just X out of all that stuff.
Okay.
Sorry, where did you say the new schedule was?
It is on the Miro board, on the whiteboard. I put the link, Leah, in the chat.
Yeah, I'm on the Miro board.
Right below Wednesday. Just added it there. There's a big arrow that points to Wednesday.
Yeah, I have Wednesday.
And right below that,
Like where all the, oh, okay. Where all the sticky notes are, the Post-it notes?
you're kind of in the middle.
Yeah.
Zoom out a little and you can see below the entire green thing. Below the entire green box. Down.
Oh, I see it now. Thank you.
That zoom and pan is probably the thing. Maybe I should just start. I haven't done this yet, but starting with a screen share of the Miro and just watching me kind of interact. It's a little intuitive that way.
Okay, that would help. Maybe me, anyway.
Can you
Oh,
see?
see, I didn't see that. Okay.
So I'm clicking and dragging, and if I zoom out, I can see everything, and I can move it around. And basically, up here, this is an attendee map of where everyone's from. This is the fun zone up here. We have questions like, what's your favorite vacation spot? Favorite South Bend spot? And then we have a tea versus coffee competition going on. Coffee's winning so far.
As it should.
Then, Diana, each day, these 4 green boxes are the feedback for each day. So what I'm doing is zooming in really far. And on Monday, session 1 has these Post-its over here that you just drag into that feedback, and you're documenting on that Post-it. You see down here what we need to do about that. And then same thing over here for session 2. The quote bank, people during the panelist talk had some great quotes we had written down, so we thought maybe that might happen as well. This is, again, just if someone says something beautiful and you want to document it for everyone, share that there. So that same format for Monday, Tuesday, and tonight, Wednesday here. So it's all blank, so you just drag a Post-it over and click into it. And yeah, start typing here. Oh, and then there's another thought here. That's kind of the short and skinny of it. Now, what we're encouraging folks to do is to have both the Zoom videos and the Miro board, both those windows up simultaneously. You guys hear the South Bend Town song?
Wondered what that was.
That it's the newest South Bend song, so playing it on loop.
Okay. Who's responsible for that?
You want to ream them just for fun?
No, I can't hear it. Let's see.
Tailgate over at Notre Dame when the golden dawn shines bright. Our horse and blue touchdown will win again tonight.
Bill, I just made you co-host.
Wish upon a cloud
Sparky Lee and Jay Jackson. Welcome, welcome. We invite you to rename yourself on the Zoom with your first name and your last name, and we invite you to add your pronouns if you'd like to.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, everyone. Sorry, I was muted.
Hi.
Hey, Bill.
Okay.
Hi, Diana.
Hi, Bill. How are you?
I'm drinking coffee. I've got to wake
Just
up.
coffee? No. I hear you. I have water.
It's good. Um,
You guys are gonna kill me. The song on loop
what is it?
is the South Bend Town song.
Is there a South Bend Town song?
Yeah. David something, he's got the latest one. There's apparently like 3 or 4. I was told though some from the past did not have the greatest, how do we say, impression of South Bend, even though they were about South Bend. They weren't exactly anthems.
I didn't know there was a South Bend song.
Yeah, who knew?
Hey, Leah.
Bill, how are you?
Good. Thanks for coming.
No problem.
That's gonna be the last time.
This time my mirror board is attached to the Zoom. And I can't separate them. Why is that?
Like sticky?
Oh well.
Sticky, is that what you mean?
I can't separate them into 2 separate windows. That's all right. Yes. Mirror.
So Bill, on the recap, I just changed it so that right when we come back, we have tomorrow's topic up, the Patreon, and then right into recap.
Okay, good. That sounds
So-
good.
Yeah, not
We always seem to run out of time.
agreed. What's a good way to set up the recap? Do you feel like we're feel like I'm saying it in a way that people understand that this is a recap?
Yeah, I think we should definitely ask though for the action items. I mean, for what they came up with, not necessarily action items, but identifying what they came up with. So obviously, for me, for housing, people came up with a lot of stuff, but they weren't really things that were actionable because there mostly were laws and things that needed to be really applied. So
Right.
actionable. Most-
Mark, welcome.
Dr. Fox,
How are you? Mark is fine.
okay, Mark, we're good.
Let's see.
Hi, Mark.
How are you?
Really good. How are you?
Good, thanks.
Hi, Mark. Hi, Bill.
Hi. Hi, Todd. How are you?
Terrific, thanks.
You're not driving.
I'm not. My schedule did change enough that I could join you without doing it while driving.
That's good. Yeah, that would be hard.
Oh, how about that? We had some light house music the other night, and Ramona was making fun of me.
You know what? I'm going to go back out and come back in.
Okay.
Because I can't access the mural board.
Yuck. Dance party. What's up? Let's see, that's 1, 2. Yes. Great. Regina, you in there? Hey,
Hey,
welcome.
thank you, thank you.
Hi, Regina.
Oh, hey Todd, how are you doing?
Great, thanks. Nice to see you again.
Oh, yeah, good to see you as always.
Hi, Regina.
Hi, Regina.
Oh, I'm on the wrong view. I was wondering where everybody was. Let me see. How do I put it on gallery view? How do I see everybody? Can't. Oh, there we go. Oh, that was Diana Hess.
Yes, it was. Long
One
time.
only.
Yeah, look at all these folks I know. Paula. Yeah.
Ooh, someone's a little glitchy.
I gotta hear that.
Long nose here, Regina.
I didn't quite understand that, but I thought that was Paula talking.
Agreed. All right, let's see. So 1 needs to be Michael, Leah, and Mark. Michael, Leah, and Mark. 2 is Todd, Regina, and Rudy. Whoa. That's not what we want. Hits from the 80s. We'll change it up per Ramona. Though she was razzing me in the breakout rooms the other night for the music selection.
As she should.
Let's see. Let's turn off the waiting room. That'd be great. So over here in the chat, we have the whiteboard link. If you haven't jumped on there yet, we invite you to jump onto the whiteboard. The link's bit.ly/UnitedSB 2020. And that's where we'll just do our documentation. So Q&A will happen in front of each other and in the chat here on Zoom. The documentation of the action items we're putting there on the whiteboard, and everyone simultaneously will be able to see each other's documentation of action items while we're with panelists and while we're in our small groups. So I have that up on the screen now. That's what you're seeing from me, is that shared whiteboard. And I'm showing you the Wednesday session right now. So I'm zooming out, zooming all the way out. I can move all this content around. And then if I want to take a look, I'm looking over here at the top left. That's where the attendees are from. We have the South Bend Fun Zone up at the top. We have 3 questions. What's your favorite vacation spot? Your favorite South Bend spot? And then there's a competition between coffee and tea. I think coffee's still got it. Diana, you're gonna be happy. Beyond that, these 4 green boxes are where we're gonna be tonight, and we're actually gonna be here on the Wednesday. So if you ever get lost throughout the evening, there's a big arrow pointing to the day we're on. We're right here at Wednesday. So when you zoom in, you can grab one of these Post-its right here and drag it over and then change the text. So you see me typing in gibberish here. And if I had another thought or an action item, I'd drag another Post-it over and I'd edit that text. Session 1 content is right here. And then I'm dragging over. Session 2 content is here. So that's where we'll be tonight. Any clarifications or feedback?
So during the breakout session 1 and 2, after the panelists present, kind of going to open it up so people can actually talk, but they're going to also be able to put stuff in the chat, questions in the chat, but people will also be able to talk. So we'll go over the rules and stuff like that whenever we get to them. So it's going to be more of an open discussion. People can ask questions. The reason you can't have both Zoom and the other page open at the same time is because Grant's sharing his screen.
Oh, if you want to get out of full screen mode on Zoom, hit escape while in the full screen. It'll kind of pull that window back.
Right.
Yeah, you're right.
Hi, Conrad. Hi, Rudy.
Hello.
Hi, Jay. Hi, Dia.
Hi, Grant. Thanks.
Welcome, welcome. Hey, Jay. Hey, Rudy.
Hello.
Ron. Hi, Cheryl.
Conrad. How was your
Hi,
day?
Conrad. How are you?
Hey, see what shirt I'm wearing?
Oh, I love it. That's a good one.
I put it on this morning and realized that what it was tonight when I was going to be on here. with you.
What is it?
You're
I
probably
still
one
have
of the
that
few
shirt.
with that shirt. You have one too, Diana?
I have it. I do.
It's a hot commodity, that shirt right there.
Right.
What shirt is it? I didn't see you stand up. I got you pinned.
I don't know.
Not to stand up. Oh.
It's
It's a World AIDS shirt.
Day.
Aw,
It's Page Ministries AIDS Assist, it says on the bottom.
nice.
Now that I've embarrassed myself in front of everyone.
Well, I love the support, Conrad. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I want a t-shirt.
We don't have those anymore. That is a really old shirt.
Those are old.
They were one of our first fundraisers. They were drawn by the daughter of one of our first clients, and we sold them then.
So
She actually came back and I gave her the last one we had.
it's now
We have a couple, but I won't tell you that.
Oh, yeah. It's a collectible, Bill.
Yeah.
I had a shirt from high school for being on the math team, which there was no way I was ever going to wear that to school. But it became cool to my son about 30 years later. So he wore it to school.
That's neat. Grant, can I call you in the morning so we can finalize things?
Yes.
Okay, great. I will do that.
And I'll have a draft of the video. And so I
Okay.
can show you whom we have. And
Right.
then we'll see. What
I'm
we-
getting a few more tonight.
Okay. It's great.
Okay, I know I heard someone say hello to me. I was in the kitchen trying to make dinner real quick as I got home from work about 10 minutes ago.
That was me.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi, Dr. Kozak.
I'm going to mute because we don't need them to hear that. What is this one? What does that do? Show thumbnail video. No. Show everybody, but that's not showing everybody. Cheryl Walsh, Conrad. I can stop my video. What's this? Why can't I see everybody? It's just,
Are you seeing a green box?
are you talking to me?
Yes.
I'm seeing the Miro board behind it and then a very small segment of just 6 people. And I'm not figuring out how to see more people.
So they're either on another page or you'll open up that window to see more videos simultaneously.
Well, I can't open up, I can't see. Oh, well, I always have problems, I think.
Oh, no, Dea, you're not going to be able to see everybody because there's a screen that's being shared.
You mean the Miro screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
The whiteboard? Yeah, I see
Right.
that, okay.
Once that Miro
Hi,
screen
Rudy.
yeah, it was my excuse to be able to say hello to you.
Yeah, and Tammy is here, but she's on the telephone.
Oh, great. Yeah, but so once that Miro screen is no longer shared, then you'll see that everybody becomes
Hello.
throughout the screen.
Yes.
Yep, there you go.
We have two of our interns here, Louis and Dylan. Hello.
That's correct.
Hey, Louis.
Hi guys, sorry. Hiya.
How's it going?
Good, thanks. How are you guys?
Good. We're rocking it. All right, so it's 6:30. We'll invite everyone to go ahead and add in their box, rename themselves their name, their first and last name, and we invite you to add your pronouns if you'd like. If you take a minute and do that, get yourself kind of settled up. We'll get started here in just a couple minutes. Still got that 80s rock rolling. Reminder to everyone, we are recording the evening, so just be mindful that that is a reality.
And it's going on Facebook, correct?
Correct.
It's being streamed. Hi, Marilyn.
Hi, Marilyn.
Oh, we have another intern, Estefania.
Yes, hello.
Hi, how are you?
Doing all right. How is everyone?
Good.
Marilyn, this is Debbie Miller. I'm on. Can you see me?
Yes, we can see you. We wish we were where you are because it looks a lot warmer.
Yeah.
It's fake. You guys know this is fake. I was just wishing for the beach. So.
Hi, Darcy.
Hi, Debbie.
Darcy.
Finally, Marilyn, I said hi to you.
Do that. Okay. Here's that up. Here's that. Everyone have their beverage of choice, whatever that may be. Water.
Wine.
Let's see. Awesome. We have 25 people in. Chat over here. We'll add the link again to the whiteboard. So reminder, this is a shared whiteboard. Everyone can see what you put into it. They cannot see the view you have. So if you pan around or zoom, no one can see that. If you grab one of the Post-it notes that are there and you type something in, we can see that. So as you document throughout the night your conversations, please put a Post-it note and share with us what you're hearing. Let's do this. I don't know why I had to say it like that, but here we go. Everyone can see the screen, hopefully.
Yep.
Awesome. Okie dokie. Well, welcome. Welcome to the third evening in our week-long summit. Thanks so much for being here and spending the time. We're going to do a brief intro, and then we'll get right into the breakouts. So today is Wednesday. This is day 3. Tomorrow we have another day of programming. Friday we will be off in an effort to allow everyone go ahead and hit mute on their Zoom. Everyone go ahead and hit mute on their Zoom for me. Here on Phil, will you help me with some mute? Ooh, we're doing dishes. Who's ever doing some dishes? Thank you. Friday, we're going to do some social distancing and get off the screen here, and we'll come back Saturday morning at 10:30 for a wrap-up keynote and a recap of the week. Today, Wednesday, 10/21, our theme for the day is what does your lifestyle say about you? And our 2 breakout sessions are going to be successfully self-managing your health and what are the ABCs of education now?
And Grant will be in the education one, and I will be in the health one.
We are using Zoom here as we're all together. Additionally, like I just said in the chat, we have a link, a bit.ly link for our shared whiteboard on the Miro website. So documentation on the Miro board is what we're trying to drive to so that we can recap it Saturday morning. So here in the Zoom, this is going to be the chat, this is going to be the Q&A, and this is where we're going to have our breakouts and where we're going to have our small group discussions. And then over on the whiteboard, we have 4 different green sections, 1 for each day. And we have 1 for Wednesday tonight that you can go on and look at. And if you zoom in, then you can see the individual section that you can type your feedback, write down your action items, and we invite you to document as much as possible. And our brief comment here on format and conduct. So for tonight, we just got started here. We'll have a welcome message. We'll have 45 minutes for panelists starting at 6:45. And during that time, the panelists are going to introduce themselves for 5 minutes each. And after those 5 minutes of each panelist, then the remaining 30 will be for you attendees to come off mute and ask questions, and then go back on mute and listen to the answer, and let the panelists really have the floor of answering in front of you all. Have the discussion together as panelists in front of everyone, and really start to set the conversation up. Because right after that, we'll break out into the small groups for 30 minutes. And that's where everyone will basically, you know, if we were in person, we'd be sitting down at a table together. And you'll have that small group table talk. And then we'll all come back together for the remaining 30 minutes and do a recap, where Bill and I would really like to hear from you the action items from your small group and your panel discussion. So be thinking about, in the meantime, the action items you'd like to share at the end. What are some things that you want the rest of the entire group to know about that you guys are having conversations on in your small groups?
I mean, the way that I look at it, it's an issue, the solution, and then what's the action item to make the solution happen. So that's what we're focusing on.
The conduct for the evening is a brainstorming style. We're here to create a safe space, and we're not going to tolerate anything but. So help us in being a safe space for yourself and each other. We're leading with respect, and our goal here is to align in our understanding with each other. So the point of bringing people together in this summit is to align our understandings, and then together document some action items we can do. And one way we go about that is the improv method of yes and. So it's always building. So when someone says something in one of your sessions, you're able to build on it. You say yes and you build on those ideas. Oftentimes in community building, we have constraints or requirements we have to work within. Sometimes it's monetary, sometimes it's social. And what we have to do is lay out a runway strategy to get them done. And the way we can go about laying out that runway is start with where we're at and build into the place we want to be. So help us use the method, yes, and create a safe space. And we should have a good night. Been having some great discussions, so we want to keep that up. Big thank you to our sponsors. BrewWorks, we're a foundational organization with BrewWorks, and we're very appreciative that every month they support with their Beer for Good program. the Neighborhood Resource Connection. We appreciate it. So they've been a longtime partner and supporter in promoting what we're doing. PNC Bank came in this year with the sponsorship for our summit. Big thank you to PNC Bank, they're our neighborhood leader sponsor. And then we have a couple of other neighborhood associations and Holy Cross College. So the Near Northwest Neighborhood, the Southeast Organized Area Residents, otherwise known as SOAR, thanks Conrad, and the Holy Cross College all supported the summit. So it's important for us to recognize them, but also let all of you know, these are the people who are prioritizing what we're doing. That's really the point here. All right, so we want to also say thank you to the board and our committee and our interns. Here listed are the NRC board and committee and our interns who helped us put all of this event together. So Bill's been working tirelessly on this event for months. So thank you to everyone who's put in energy in making it all possible.
Thank you, everyone, for sure.
And lastly, we just want to say before we go into the breakouts, thank you. All of you could be somewhere else. It's 6:30 on a Wednesday, but you made the commitment and chose to be here with us. So let's do our best to be here and appreciate each other and the energy we bring to the evening. All right, we have panelists, Mark Fox, Michael Kozak, Leah Hopper, Regina Williams-Preston, Rudy Monterosa, and Todd Cummings this evening. In the breakouts, you're going to hear more from them on what they do day to day in relation to their breakout topic. You're going to be able to ask them questions and hear some feedback, and then small group session chats. What else, Bill, before we go into breakouts?
I think that's it. Let's
All
start
right,
the discussion.
Let's start the discussion. Let's turn these things on. You sit back and relax. You're going to be automatically sent into the rooms. Oh, it's coming up on my, I see. All the screens. Got it. Stop share and we'll open the rooms. Marilyn, where would you like to be? You're on mute. Do you want health or education? You're on mute.
Health.
Health. Awesome.
And my friend Debbie Miller that signed in is supposed to be in health.
Got her. All right.
Is what's the future of education in South Bend, and how do we see it moving along a path? But obviously, a lot of people are concerned about COVID too, and all the constraints that COVID has put on education. Hey, Grant, I'm in the wrong.
Yep. Yeah. Thanks. Hey, everyone. I got a couple people set up there. Welcome to the education breakout session. Just wanted to, sounds like Bill got a little bit started. Todd, Regina, Rudy, yeah?
Yep.
Sounds good. So yeah, quality education, it's a community commitment. We're here to talk about how education plays a role in our community, and then our panelists' relationship to that commitment and what it is we're doing here locally. So we'll give each panelist 5 minutes to introduce a little bit about them and what they're doing. And then we'll do the open discussion where people can ask Q&A. So Todd, do you want to kick us off?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So welcome everyone. Grant, thank you for the invitation. So I'm Todd Cummings and I am the superintendent of South Bend Schools. And so what I do on a day-to-day basis is ensure that the mission and vision that the board has laid out gets implemented. And so think of my job as an inverted triangle. Well, no, it's a triangle, I suppose, where the Board of School Trustees has one employee. So the 7 board members who are publicly elected have one employee, and that employee is me. And then together with a team of assistant superintendents, we manage the day-to-day workings of the corporation. So I have an assistant superintendent for accountability, for operations, a chief finance officer, general counsel. Make sure I get them all. Am I done? Am I leaving one out? I think we're done. So the smallest administrative system that South Bend has had in many years, we've cut nearly $1 million out of our central office. So, administrative salaries are nearly 21% down, and South Bend has the 3rd lowest administrative costs in Indiana. So when you rank all the school districts in Indiana, we have the 3rd lowest administrative costs. So we have lots of people who have double jobs, but we love what we do. And so about me, I'm a former English teacher. I spent my entire career at middle school, where I taught English and writing as a student. I'm a former stuttering special ed student. And so with great support from grandparents and a mother, went to college, and while it took me a little bit of time, ended up becoming a teacher. And from a teacher, I worked my way into strategy, and then strategy to human resources, and then deputy superintendent, and then superintendent. And so I don't know if I can do this really quickly. I'm going to try. I don't know how much time I have, but I want to talk a little bit, like I mentioned earlier, about our foundational statements as a district. So we do have a vision statement, which the board has just completed. So we want to be, so where do we want to be in the next few years? We want to be the community's first choice for relevant and inspiring education. Our mission statement: together with our community, we create equitable, inclusive, and just schools to ensure all students achieve academic and personal success. Our priority statements: academic excellence. We will advance students' skills and competencies in literate practices across all areas. Equity, inclusion, and justice. We will adopt an anti-racist perspective to ensure access to opportunities for all students and staff. Financial sustainability. We will responsibly and transparently manage our fiscal and capital resources to deliver a quality education. And finally, community partnerships. We will extend, deepen, and monitor community partnerships to strengthen student learning. And in my last few minutes, I just want to say thank you to Mr. Monterosa, who is one of our 7 board members. His leadership enabled us to have these mission, vision, and priority statements. And so I'm grateful every day for the terrific board that I have. And Mr. Monterosa put students first, and I'm grateful for his leadership. So Grant, I think
that's good.
I think that did it.
You hit the nail on the head as far as your 5 minutes. Thank you. Rudy, do you want to go ahead? Good follow-up.
Sure. Absolutely. Grant, thank you and everybody that's involved with this association for inviting me to be a part of this. You know, what I'm really excited about being here tonight is the fact that even, you know, different people throughout the pandemic and throughout this year have said different ways of saying what I'm about to say now, but that even when we're apart, we're still together, right? And so I like the fact that we've been using technology to be able to still connect with other folks and do it in a safe way. So, you know, when I listen to Dr. Cummings speak, and he's mentioned this before, he talks about his experience as a child and how people in the community looked out for him, how teachers looked out for him, how his own family looked out for him, how the community looked out for him. And then look at him today, right? He's a superintendent, one of the top 25 superintendents to look out for throughout the nation. And we're proud to have him be a part of this corporation. And so I think back to how someone made that same impact in my life. And it was literally that there was a teacher out there who saw something in me, who saw that I had potential, and then and was vested in me. And because of that, whatever the teacher saw, because of the fact that they believed in me, then I rose up to the challenge and became something of myself. But it wasn't just a teacher. It was actually when I went to a leadership conference, and many of you may have heard me talk about this before, it's when I went to a leadership conference as a 9th grader, that it was just community members gathered together and said, you know, across the country at the time, and I think we still have the same issue now, unfortunately, that there was a greater than a 50% dropout rate amongst Latino high school students, that we just weren't graduating. And especially there in San Bernardino County, which is where I grew up in California. And so there, this group got together and said, we need to do something about this. And so they just volunteered, took about 120, or maybe it was about 100 8th and 9th grade students from throughout the Inland Empire, and took them up to the mountains in San Bernardino and basically taught us that we could be proud of who we were, that we shouldn't be ashamed of our heritage, and that that we could graduate from high school, and even better than that, that we could actually go to college. And they gave us role models. There were people that volunteered their time, and many when the organization first started, many of them were teachers, and they told us, look, I went to college, I went to UCLA, I went to Stanford, I went to Cal State San Bernardino, and all of a sudden we saw these were people that looked like us, that kind of had the same background that we did. You know, I come from an immigrant family, and these were folks that either were immigrants themselves or came from an immigrant family. And so then I could relate. And I remember that in particular, there was a mock trial that they conducted. And when they conducted that mock trial, the lawyer that was out there, who now coincidentally is a judge, he went up there and advocated for his client. And when I saw him, I said, well, in my mind, I was thinking, well, he looks like me. His last name also ends in a vowel. And if he can do it, I can do it. And so that was it, right? There was never an attorney that I ever met inside my family. Nobody in my family was a lawyer. I'm the first one to become an attorney. Well, I'm the first one to graduate from Stanford, the first one to go to Notre Dame, the first one, the only one that's here in South Bend, Indiana still. But my point is that when I saw these people, the fact that they were able to accomplish their goals, it really gave me the sense that I could do the same. And that had such a dramatic impact on my life that I've been going back to that organization. I'm on the board now for the conference, and I participate in the conference every year. And I've been going back every year since 1988. So I dedicate a week of my time. So now I've aged myself, but now that's like over 30 years. And I was telling Grant before I participated in this conference here today that we've had this physical conference. You know, I think we've celebrated 35 years. This year we had to think about, well, how are we going to do it in light of the pandemic? And we did the same thing that we're doing now with the summit. We made sure we did it virtually, and we still had that impact because we still have those issues in San Bernardino County. So I tell that whole story, and I see here that I have a minute left. I tell that whole story to share that I think that's why we need to be invested in education, right? So I still go back, and now I dedicate a significant amount of my time, which is what I live for, to serving the underserved, being a voice for others. That's what I do. What I did for 17 and a half years as a public defender in St. Joseph County is what I still do now as a criminal and immigration defense attorney, that I'm looking out for other folks that may not have the voice, like my parents that didn't have that voice. But more importantly, I serve on the school board because I realize that education and the public school system is a huge part of our community. And that if we have a solid public education system and we have a solid school, then we're able to contribute to the city of South Bend. And so I believe that that's why when we talk about, you take a look at your health, like your lifestyle, and we see who you are, then my lifestyle is to volunteer for my community, because I feel that in volunteering for my community, making myself accessible, then some way I can have an impact. Clearly on the board, we have an impact because of the policy decisions we make, how we work with the superintendent, and what we do with the buildings. But I just think on a personal level, making sure that you're present and out there, you don't know where the next 8th grade, 9th grader can be, and you don't know how you're going to impact them such that they can make a difference in our community. You didn't realize the impact that you had, but that's why I believe it's important that we invest in our education.
Thanks so much, Rudy. The story I know resonates with me. I'm guessing resonates similarly in having someone like a teacher who looked after you. And that really is the idea moving forward that inspired you. So now it's fun to then have a teacher from the same corporation with us, Regina Williams Preston. Regina, you want to give us your 5 intro?
Sure. Hi, everybody. So as he said, Regina Williams Preston, and I identify as a public school teacher. That's really who I am and who I've always been called to be. That's right. Yay, public schools. In fact, thank you, Conrad. We always want to acknowledge our former teachers. He was at LaSalle back in the day when I graduated. Love you. It's all good. And another teacher. Now I'm going to call out our teachers. That's what we talk about me. But Linda, thank you for your service as well. I particularly have been teaching in South Bend schools or in the city of South Bend for 20 years now, particularly in the area of special education. I started kind of cutting my teeth. I taught always on the west side at Harrison and Navarre, and taught in special education, students with emotional disabilities. And I use those quotes because we know that there are issues out there with overrepresentation of particular demographics of students in special ed, most specifically little Black boys. And so that's what I mostly had in my class, students who were kind of left behind, pushed out, kind of given up on oftentimes, and were often considered the kids with the greatest needs and challenges. And that experience has really shaped the course of my life in the last 20 years in terms of advocacy. Because not only am I a teacher, I strongly identify being an activist. Many of you know that I also served on the South Bend Common Council. So as an elected official, I've had the opportunity to kind of be on both sides, right? And I feel like I still straddle those worlds. We got a chance to get a peek behind the curtain and understand more how systems work. And there's a lot of talk these days about, systemic racism and what that is. And a lot of the work, my journey has really included breaking down those systems. First, really raising awareness of these major issues that's creating this disproportionate issues within our community for Black folks. And then identifying those policies and practices and really pushing to bring about change. Issues around school to prison pipeline and various different issues around equity have been a major force in the work that I've been doing. Along with, I'm also the president of the Community Forum for Economic Justice, which is where I really learned the art of advocacy and organizing and really bringing people together around these issues. Yes, speak truth to power and hold our officials and our decision makers accountable, and also working with them, right? To make sure that we're actually not just fighting to fight, but engaging in a way that's going to really bring about change. And a lot of what I do and talk about now, it's easy to talk. It's easy to say, we believe in equity. What do we say now? Diversity, inclusion, and it all sounds good. But what does it mean? And I have this experience on both sides again, even as elected official. I was always striving to say, well, how do we take those values and turn them into action and really bring about change that people can see, touch, and feel, something that's really going to change people's lives. And so South Bend schools, as you know, we struggle with equity, just like equitable outcomes, just like districts all across the country. What I'm excited about is that I believe we're just the right size as a community to get education right. And I feel that, for a lot of different reasons, we are moving in the right direction. We've brought about a lot of awareness within our community itself. Of course, we know this summer has just changed everything in terms of how people are looking at these issues of equity. And so it's just the right time, I believe, for our community to really take some steps that's going to do something different. So today I look forward to being able to talk about those solutions. We had a wonderful session last night, reaching out to our local partners in Indiana. We had Dr. Pat Payne come up from Indianapolis, who's been fighting the fight for 58 years. And their board just passed a policy around creating a racial equity mindset and a commitment to action. And so I think that there are models out there, things that we can begin to do here in South Bend. So I'm just, again, thankful to be here and excited to start the conversation. You hear my beep? I did 5 minutes. Aren't you proud of me?
Thanks, Regina. That's awesome. Always a teacher. I am the same.
There you go. Okay.
Thanks so much for the intros. Regina, you took it kind of into that diversity, equity, inclusion. I've heard lots of the same, or similarly, I've heard acronyms over the years, right, of how to reframe or repackage that same stuff. Part of my love, and in addition to education, is startups. And oftentimes the same conversation happens when you're creating a company of how to build a team. And it kind of just gets back to people in a team. So a team on a basketball court, a team in a classroom, a team in a business. And it's just so funny how it's so easy to put diversity as a finish line that you need to reach, rather than a starting line to springboard you to where you want to be. So I always like to reframe that. Honestly, diversity is really what you should be starting with. It's not a goal to meet later. But this is the time now for all of us to jump on the video here, ask some questions or probe conversations. And the three of you panelists, this is your time to respond and talk at length and kind of synthesize some of the things you brought up together.
Well, I just want to acknowledge, because I think it's really exciting, that when Dr. Cummings, and I want to thank him, when Dr. Cummings made his introduction, he talked about, he's using that language of anti-racist. And, you know, that's where it starts. Like, we may not have it all figured out. We may not know the exact path, but we have to make a commitment to that work. So, you know, naming it and, you know, hearing that coming from the top is really, really important. And so I just want to acknowledge that today. To me, that's a really great place to start.
Yeah, I would add, Regina, and I know that you probably know it better than a lot of us here, or I mean, I guess I don't know everybody else's history, but the fact that you served on the Common Council for such a long period of time and were there in the trenches, how important it is to be able to have a seat at the table, right? How important it is that the governing body that represents us accurately reflects the body that we serve. And the reason that's important is, it's especially to the point, you know, when Dr. Cumming was going over that presentation about the strategic plan, you know, the board, as I'm sure you've done before with the Common Council, gathered together before, and every word mattered. And I remember that Miss Jones, Miss Aletha Jones, was saying, like, it's important for us to put this language in there. And there was discussion about, well, you know, 20 years ago, it was, we have to be politically correct was the term that we were using, right? And so there was some concern that, well, will this term be outdated, or will it still be relevant? And there was a strong feeling like, no, this is something that's important. This is something that needs to be placed in there. And she was right, you know, because I'm hearing it from you that it was something that the community embraced. And it's something that's important for us to be able to accept, that we have to take these responsibilities seriously, and that we have to embody this manner of being, that it's not enough to say we're not going to be racist or we're going to be diverse, that we're taking a stand and saying, no, we're looking at this from an anti-racist lens and act accordingly. But I think it matters who's at the table, right? Because if at that table was, you know, what we see in the Senate, right? If it's all just older folks from a certain ethnicity that maybe they never had to confront that issue. And I'm not saying that just because we're not Black, Latino, or white, or what have you, that you're not that you wouldn't be aware of what those issues are. I'm just saying that personally, you may not have experienced it, so you may not think it's an issue. But
I think you're right on target with that. One of the things that we're learning, when you think about organizational change or even change in society, they talk about that there's 4 facets of change. For an institution, you have to have change in policy, changes of practice, You have to change and think about your allocation of your resources. And the final thing I think is what's really hard is changing the narrative. And that's something that we've struggled with in South Bend. And so Rudy, your point about who's making the decisions, you know, if it's just one kind of particular group of people, whether it's middle to upper class folk, white folks, older gentlemen, you know, whatever that is, if it's monolithic, then you have one narrative, one perspective. And that's the piece, like I said, that I think we've really struggled with. So your point about figuring out how we can get more voices at the table in an authentic way, not just, okay, we're going to do a process, everybody shows up, we got a diverse group, take a picture on the first day, because by day 3, 4, it's over, everybody's gone, you know. So thank you for pointing that out.
And I just want to add to both what Regina and Rudy have said, is that it takes leadership, especially in my case. It takes leadership from the board who understands the community, who understands specifically needs of students. And so hopefully we'll talk in a second about dashboards. And we've developed dashboards. So I'm looking at one right now about transportation call centers, monitoring student reading level. So when you take leadership from the board level and you drive it down to classrooms, that's where you have equity and the concern for every single student. And I just want to say thank you both to Regina and Rudy for their leadership, both in the community and to Rudy specifically, to the school board, because you wouldn't have those conversations that we're still having and we need to continue having without great board leadership. So I want to say thank you.
So this concept of bringing people to the table, you know, and I talked about the importance of that being authentic. You know, there's a process that we're struggling with right now to think about what does it mean to truly, like, what does it mean to be culturally responsive? Well, one thing, you know, you can't be without like actually having the different perspectives around, right? You won't know how to change your policy, change your practices. But there's also like a more of a challenge to like this idea of collective decision making. And this is language that, you know, we're working with now in terms of, okay, what does that mean? Because, you know, we have people who are in charge and they're the ones who make the decision. Like, we're going to hear what you say, but we get to make the decision. And so, you know, it really challenges the whole way that like society runs, right? What would it mean? And as a council person, that's one thing that I learned. I say it all the time. You know, you can't make good policy without engaging with the people who you're going to impact the most. Like if they have the problem, they typically know the solution. And what they're missing is maybe the money or the social capital to really put those different things in place. And so that to me is one of the key things. How do we connect with people who've basically turned off? I mean, let's talk about South Bend. I mean, there's a lot of people out there who just don't believe. I'm still knocking on doors and people saying, I'm not going to vote. Why should I vote? You know, how has our leadership historically not represented the people, right, authentically? It might look like a Grant, you kind of made that point. Like, even if we look the part, are we truly engaging with folks to really enact policy and practices that's going to connect with them and change their lives in a way that they want, right? We represent them. So that I think is also a challenge because we have a broken trust with our community in terms of education. And that's something we're going to have to figure out how to do. How do we rebuild trust?
What a big question at getting to narrative of what either people are saying to each other in South Bend or what students are thinking to each other. I know when I'm doing junior achievement, I'm trying to get to that narrative of trust of being whoever I am to them, just saying like, hey, I'm born and raised here in South Bend and I go about doing the things that I want to do because they're a priority important to me. So, I mean, that would be every individual student, right? Like that's the whole teacher. Maybe some of you wear the starfish pin, right? There's a guy walking down the beach and there's a whole bunch of starfish on the beach and he's throwing, literally it's covered. So he's throwing starfish in and someone comes along and says, hey buddy, what are you doing? You're not gonna save all these starfish. So he picks one up, throws it in, says, I saved that one. And that's like this mantra of teaching that, yeah, you can't touch every life of every student ever, but you can touch the life of one student every day. I don't know if that, you could talk about that and how to get that sort of done from an education standpoint here in South Bend.
Well, I think that's true as a teacher. Like, you know, in my class, I can work that way. But that's what's exciting about having the superintendent showing up at 6:30 at night and board members showing up at 6:30 at night, because they can make the difference. They can bring in a giant tide of equity and wash all of those wonderful starfish back into the ocean. You know, that's the power that we have. And that's what I mean about South Bend being a special place. We're small enough, yet we're big, but we're small enough that, you know, we have connections with our elected officials, and we can make that kind of change to make a difference.
And I would add to that, I'm a teacher at heart, and I view my work as a teacher. So one of the things that my board wants me to do, and that I think is one of my skill sets, is being engaged, whether it's being engaged at a football game or it's being engaged in the community or what have you. Plus, I enjoy doing that. So for me, it's just as important if I see a student sitting by themselves at lunch to stop and engage and ask them about themselves. And when we think about literacy, what book are you reading? Do I have a book that I want to recommend to a student? And so I like in engaging with our students. I wish I did it more. I craft time out of my weeks to be able to do it. And the other thing that I decided to do was I wasn't going to set up a superintendent group of students that I was going to hear from every Friday. I spend Fridays, now that we're back in school, I spend Fridays in school asking students how it's going. How's the food? How's busing? How's transportation? What do you like? What do you not like? What do you think about being back in school? So I want to know from our stakeholders. I want to know from the folks that we serve. And so I think that it's important for me to continue to engage with students and to ensure that their voice is heard, and finding time to do that is really important. And students will call you out. They'll call you out if the food's not good. They'll call you out if their bus is late. And the beautiful thing is I send an email and it gets fixed. And that's the part that I love. And someone has asked, can I read comments?
Of course.
Someone has asked a question, Kaya, about the board and the Common Council work together. So we did do the fall. We did the fall meeting, the joint meeting for the first time ever. And so since then, the school board and the Common Council are working on next steps. So a resolution, which will hopefully get to a school city compact. I'm working with the mayor and our one-on-ones. And so the two groups are working together to form a school city compact. So with election years and changes in the council, there's been a few stops and starts, but they are still working on it. I don't know if I was supposed to answer that or not, Graham. I saw it.
Yep. That's what the time's for. Yeah.
Where are you reading these things?
They're coming up in the chat box.
Oh, that was in the chat. I was looking at this whiteboard thing. Okay, gotcha.
That makes me so nervous. I know. I'm looking at it. I'm watching it. I'm
like over there. Okay, I had turned it off, but it's there.
Hey.
Yeah, if I can, I guess ask a question, make a comment. So when I heard, diversity as being not, sort of the starting line, not necessarily the end goal, I think, what that made me think of is that, in any creative problem-solving process, trying to be innovative and so on, I mean, if you operate in an echo chamber, when you don't have diversity and you're not inclusive and you don't give everybody a voice at the table, you're going to keep ending up with the same old tired solutions, over and over again. I mean, it's a prerequisite, to coming up with creative answers to things. And I think that goes, whether you're planning a school corporation all the way down to projects that a third grader, might do in a classroom. But that kind of thing doesn't happen for free. It's not sufficient to just put, a diverse group together at the table. I think, there needs to be, particularly if people haven't done that before, some level of facilitation, some level of training. to help people, sort of reap the power that you can get out of that situation. And, I'd be interested in anybody's comments on that as it, relates to any, part of the process, whether it's, from the superintendent's office, again, down to a third grade classroom.
I'd be curious about the commitment of the board and the administration is to anti-racism. How does that then, what is the role of the school corporation then in teacher training and in curriculum development to make it so that we're creating anti-racist teachers and anti-racist students and eventually an anti-racist community? Because it seems to me that it's all well and good to say that we're going to have a board that is committed to this, but unless our curriculum reflects this and our actions require it, we haven't done the job. So I know that's asking a lot, but what's in the pipeline to begin that process of making an anti-racist society here in South Bend, the school corporation?
Kind of to level that up, does Indiana teachers have to do continuing education to continue to teach? Is that already part of an Indiana state requirement of?
No.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? Did not just say we can't do it? I don't know. I thought I heard something like that.
There is, at least before I retired, there was such a requirement, but you filled it a variety of ways, and it wasn't in any kind of way that had direction and that would really be able to change what was happening. Last night, whenever we wanted to make sure, this is the meeting with Dr. Payne from Indianapolis, we wanted to make sure there were different perspectives at that meeting. And when we started looking at who from the administration, it was important to us that we invite the administrator. It happened to be Mr. White, who is in charge of curriculum, because too often there's a popular narrative. I see some of it in today's South Bend Tribune. There's a popular narrative that the problem we have to deal with when we talk at race are the problems presented by young Black children, especially young Black men. And so, although I was involved and Regina, a lot of people were involved about the school to prison pipeline, and that was very important to look at those inequities, which really would drive students out of school and really destroy their life. It became so that people thought in terms, the problem is the kids that are misbehaving in class. And that became a very popular narrative. And I don't mean to diminish the importance of it, but it is just as popular to talk about the way the curriculum is developed, from my understanding. What did it mean as a 9th grade science teacher when I got students who were convinced they couldn't do? There's something the matter, because some of those same students who were convinced what they couldn't do were exactly the ones that could do more than anyone else in the room. And so if we talk about these problems, which are really intricate, it has to open the doors and really discuss it with the people, and understanding how basic it is and how it hits at the center and what's at the stake for all of us. That's what we're going to talk about. What happens to us, me, a white person, what happens to me in South Bend who lives in a comfortable house and is able to order my groceries because I'm too old to go to the grocery store, but I have enough money to order them delivered to my house? What does it mean for me if we neglect the public education, which has increasingly the brown and Black students in our community?
Let's have our panelists respond to maybe some of what you're saying there, Linda. A lot of great points brought up there. Definitely the experience you have there.
I love hearing what you just shared, Linda. That the fact about that we have to make sure that we invest in public schools. So I think about Arizona, that in the Tucson, I think it was the Tucson Unified School District, that they had a program called MAS. It was the Mexican American Studies program. And what they found was that there were students that were starting to do really poorly in school. And so in this particular district, they implemented this Mexican American Studies program. Some may call it ethnic studies or Chicano studies. They called it MAS. And what they found was that, number one, it wasn't just people of Mexican descent that were getting involved with, that were opting to be able to take these classes. It was also, it was a diverse group. And what they ended up finding, the whole point of the studies was to be able to show how Mexican Americans had, and really diverse bodies, had contributed to every single chapter of the history of the United States, right? The history of our people. That it wasn't just this narrative, like you had mentioned before, the other narrative, right? That it was George Washington and Andrew Jackson, people that were of a certain race that were the founders of this country. It was a lot more diverse than that. And what they ended up finding was that the students actually started improving in school. They actually started feeling pride of who they were, and their academics started reflecting. They were doing well in tests. They were talking about going to college. And then, I don't remember who, I believe it was the school board. The school board said, no, well, this is anti-American. This is, you can't be teaching this. And so then they dismantled it. And of course, there was a lawsuit with regard to that, and I'm happy to report that MAS was successful because they saw that they weren't discriminating. They weren't saying that being white was a bad thing, or they were just saying that no, we need to learn about about everybody. And so I think that when we're talking about the other question where we started this conversation was, are we committed to be able to continue with this anti-racist, perspective, or these lenses that I had mentioned before? I think it starts from the top. And then, and for us as a board, it's important that as a board, we're saying this is important. This is what we're laying as a priority. The school board is laying this as a priority. And then from there, we trust that it will trickle down such that we get to the point what Mr. Damien had said earlier today. But right now, we're at the beginning stages, right? We're still working through the strategic plan. We're asking for community input. And it is very important for us to be able to hear from members of the community so that they can see, well, is this sufficient? Is this the plan that we're going to adopt? Where are we missing? What can we add to it? Is this sufficient? And then hopefully, and that way, if we get investment from the community, from stakeholders, from our staff, from our teachers, from our students, then hopefully we can get to the point of what Mr. Damien was talking about making sure that we implement it from the top down to the bottom.
If I can just add to what Mr. Montrosa said and answer a few of the other questions. So we've started laying the groundwork. So in the last year, we've added a chief equity officer. The district has not had federal grants in the past. And so we have earned nearly $35 million in federal grants, 7 of that focused on equity specifically. So we've been able to hire an assistant superintendent of equity because I'm a firm believer in what gets measured gets done. When it has oversight, it gets done. And so out of that grows a department that does have the thought leadership group that Mr. Montrosa talked about. It coordinates Brown Learning Center, which is a place for parents and students to get resources, whether it's SAT prep or play basketball or what have you. We also hosted an expungement evening there. So it's a place for the community. And so partnering, because you can't have equity without academics, working together with academics, our chief equity officer, our assistant superintendent for equity, and our chief academic officer work together then to plan professional learning for teachers, principals, staff people, non-certified folks. And so that comes out through our professional learning program. And teachers do have to renew. I have to renew my license every 5 years. And so you do what's called PGPs, which the acronym just escaped me. And so you get
growth points. I know those well.
Professional growth points. So I collect 90, Regina collects 90, and so we send them together for the state. So everything that you do with professional learning counts. We've started going down the path of micro-credentialing and badging our teachers so that we're able to develop strands that we specifically want our folks to learn and know. So whether it be technology, we're working on an equity one now. And so we're able to help folks pick certain strands that they want to learn. And certainly when it's done, equity will be one of those strands.
And I wanna just qualify. I mean, I heard Rudy was talking about, you know, it starts at the top, and I don't think it just starts at the top. And I'm not saying you were saying that, but I think everybody needs to do what they can where they are, and it in order to get the top moving, right? It often takes folks who are in the community who they're supposed to be representing. I think that when we just focus on the people at the top and we kind of wait for them to, you know, figure it out, then we miss out. And, you know, there's a conversation going on in the chat about, you know, youth and youth voice, and we should have a youth council, and like the city council has a youth council, and, you know, what can we do for like a youth board? What it means, because Rudy, you said it at the table, what would it mean to explore actually changing whatever we have to change in terms of our bylaws, our policy, to actually have youth represented as the board, like on the board with voting power? You know, how can we really create that authentic engagement? That's not just, oh, well, that's a good idea, young people. Oftentimes we kind of pat them on the head and they take good pictures with us. But, you know, are we truly representing? And then who is that, right? Is it the straight A student, you know, that we're engaging with, who the system, the way it's set up, is working for them? You know, how are we really truly getting the folks that we can say all children are represented, all children are learning well? That's the thing. You know, we have lots of really good programs, but we have to figure it out in terms of how do we bring about equity in academic achievement and outcomes.
That's so much. I love that you're saying that, because it makes it it's like the basis of any good programming or business you might run, right? You're doing your customer validation of making sure, like you're doing, Todd, you're going and talking to students, right? That you're just making sure that, hey, am I putting forth a good product here? This education thing that I'm doing, is this a great product? It's amazing. Regina, such an obvious point of like, so are we listening to the people we're serving? Like, that's really at the basis of what you're saying, is like, are we literally requiring ourselves to meet the needs of the people we're serving?
Well, and so, you know, we have to call it out. We know that, like districts across the country, we have a predominantly white teaching force. We have an ever-growing student body of color. How are we, I think somebody, maybe it was Conrad, you know, asking the question, like, how are we training teachers? How are we engaging? Because yes, it'd be great. We need to recruit people of color to teach, and people of color aren't going into education like they used to. So there's like a lot of things we have to do to make that happen. And yet we know it's not that white people can't teach children of color, you know, but it's not just race. We also, when we have that diverse group of folks, we have to begin to look at our mindset with regards to class. Because if you're a teacher, you've got a certain amount of education, you're making a certain amount of money. And if you're living in an area or working with families, so, you know, we have a lot of things to work on. You know, when we talk about systemic oppression, we've got a lot of work. So how do you have the courage as a district? I loved what Dr. Payne said last night. Somebody asked kind of that question, it's like, well, how did you get the teachers engaged? She said, well, they were voluntold that they had to be there. And at this point in Indianapolis schools, they have now, it's a requirement. They work with the Racial Equity Institute, and every single human being that works for the district, I don't care what role it is, you have to go through these 2-day intensive training. And she talked about that's just the beginning. So you always have to keep it in front. So there's ongoing work, and it's all about engagement and learning. And there's that commitment. They're also training community members. So until we make the commitment and say, this is just how we roll. So, you know, I think we're not going to make it. Like, we got to really make that commitment, be serious about it, and engage people in a way that they're at the table too. White folks need a seat at the table around race. Talk about that all the time. Because oftentimes the resistance, I do teacher training now, and so working with teachers, sometimes the resistance is the fear that, oh, now I'm going to be called racist and everything's going to be blamed on me, it's my fault. But once you get into the conversation, if it's done well and done right, white people have been hurt by racism. It's in a very different way, but there are stories there. And we need to validate and listen to those stories, have those affinity groups where white folks can work on their stuff. Yes, there's white privilege and there's pain. So let's work on it. And then let's come together. So in and out of those groups, I think is how it's going to happen. Being able to have those honest conversations and really, but you know, we got to invest in it. Who said that? Somebody said that already. You make the commitment, then you got to put some dollars behind it to make it happen.
So do we also have in the school system a focus on inequities with in terms of economic privilege? Because I mean, just from what I remember growing up in the 90s in South Bend, a lot of students that I knew, classmates, had issues going on at home, like drug use by the parents, drug growing by the parents. There were issues of abuse that weren't reported because of a lack of language, because the kids were so young. So things that didn't go reported for 8-10 years because there weren't the words to articulate what was going on in the house in a way that was recognizable as abuse by providers. So how are we engaging with social workers in the classrooms to make sure that kids of any race aren't in any, honestly, economic situation are not being held back by those circumstances of, you know, abuse or not having access to running water or having parents that are messed up in the legal system in one way or another, and those students are kind of put in between their own safety and their family staying together.
Sure, I would love to tackle that. So our board has ensured that every school now has its own social worker. And when we start spending the referendum dollars, we will ensure that we have at least 2 where it's needed. So some places will need fewer resources, some places will need more. So we will equitably move those resources from schools that don't need as much to schools that need them. That's equity. The other thing I want to highlight is during the pandemic, we have fed nearly 1 million meals to families and their students. And we were focused on narrowing the digital divide, and we put Wi-Fi on all of our buses. And we now have enough hotspots that I believe we were about 32% who did not have connectivity. We are likely closing that gap to ensure that every student, and we opened it to their families, have access to the internet and are connected. Now, we would like to get away from that being on buses, and we're talking with the city about how do we make that permanent? How do we put that on poles in our most underserved neighborhoods? I believe connectivity and access to the internet is a basic human right, and we want to make sure that everyone has that right. Because how do you get access to your students' medical records? How do you apply for unemployment insurance if, as a family, you don't have the internet? So we're committed to making sure that all of our students and their families are connected. And again, doesn't happen without great board leadership, committed to a nurse in every building, social workers in every building, feeding nearly 1 million meals. We continue to do that even when students are off, and providing Wi-Fi for our entire city. One of the leading folks in America to do that.
You mentioned dashboards. One thing I ran into with my student being at Madison, that's on the west side. It's a high poverty school. When school started, like the day school was supposed to start, there were only 10% of the students had their Chromebooks. Getting over to Edison to pick up Chromebooks was difficult for me, and I have a pretty flexible employer, and it was not easy to do given the time constraints and the travel. So it did not surprise me at all that only 10% of the students had their Chromebooks picked up. And so I feel like there's maybe some improvements that could be made with kind of sort of proactive expectations about equity and access that would maybe again be just, I don't know if the teachers or the principals are not able to communicate their needs to the administration, or if the principals are responsible and they're overstressed, or where the breakdowns are happening. But that seemed really concerning to me that we were starting out on day one with the kids already 90% of the students behind.
So I know
just,
that.
I'm sorry, just a couple of thoughts about that. First, I appreciate your insight. And I've made a note of your comment, so thank you. We did ask students to bring their Chromebooks back. I will say that. So they were asked to leave them at home. So students were not asked to return Chromebooks. And so we did replace those in school. But if you're talking about how folks accessed Chromebooks when school first started, we do know that is something that needs to be addressed. But I do appreciate you bringing it up tonight.
And also the feedback about not bringing back the Chromebooks, I didn't actually ever see that. So I heard about it in a meeting, but then I wasn't really sure if there were actually Chromebooks already purchased. So the communication is still, could use some improvement, I think. I don't know if maybe the schools are responsible for sending out that information, and there's some technological gaps at the school level sometimes that make it a little difficult.
Thank you.
Yeah, Allison.
Allison, that's a great segue to the small group discussion of how to do things like that. So do a bit more customer validation on the education system, obviously in South Bend. That includes all things education, kids, adults, retired, right? I know a lot of people are probably going back to the drawing board at this point with COVID of how to learn, because they're having to learn new systems. And they're saying, like, oh, how does this work?
Hey.
And,
Great
I'm reminding people that you weren't born driving, and you learned how to drive because it was a thing. So we're gonna go into the small breakouts when we talk action items on things we talked about here. We'll see you over there.
Hard stop at 8. Grant, are we supposed to have new people who we haven't?
Yeah, these people were not in the session on education.
Yep. Moving around on the small breakouts, just chats. Yep.
Okay, and hard 8 p.m. stop, right?
Right, and then at 8 we'll do the talk back and recap.
So they're not going to be talking about health services. They're going to be talking about education now. Oh, wow.
We can talk about what we want.
Yeah, you can talk about what you want.
There's no rules.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well-
I guess, what did the other breakout, what did you guys, Todd, talk about in your session?
That's an excellent question. I was getting ready to ask you the same thing. So we talked about education in South Bend. We talked about the role of school.
And we talked about the importance of bringing everybody to the table, so that there's a real
Trying to get people involved in our free diabetes prevention program. And what I'm really interested in, my father was a dentist here a long time ago. And I live very near Niles. I live on State Line Road, and my friends
have to wear a mask. It's amazing.
It's crazy. But I do know from my experience working in the healthcare field before, people are afraid, they're frightened to go, especially people of color.
Moved around, lived in like 6 states, and moved back 2 years ago. So now I'm navigating the school system as a teacher, or as a parent, that is, and navigating government because I'm pretty involved in what's going on, because I feel like the city didn't change a lot in those 20 years. So yeah, that's where I'm coming from.
Jasmine, how are you?
My concerns is moving to being anti-racist requires a different mindset.
like that's problematic, so there's all of those issues as well. So we're saying, we've been saying, people in the community, we need a school, city.
Did.
I was in your class.
Wait a minute, wait a minute. No, wait a minute. You were, now was that, which class was that?
It was a diabetes class. My neighbor,
Open right now on the stage that the state is opening. However,
Oh, no, if they have no food, no seating, and they're dancing, and there can be no spaces, it is illegal for them to be opening.
well, the biggest problem right now the health department is having, it's the most egregious challenges are the bars, without a doubt. And so so that came up at certainly the last council meeting when we lost our vote. Those of us who thought we were going to pass that fines ordinance. So yes, that's a problem.
So is that an action item? 1 inch of space between people or face
I'm
to
like,
face.
yeah.
And I have them in class every day.
So
So they
my-
can be sick this day, one the other. We're doing nothing about that.
So
Absolutely.
I-
nothing.
That's not true. The health department is trying to do something about that, and part of it's related to these fines that they want to pass. Now, what they could also do, we don't have to pass this fine ordinance. By state law, they can go in we see that we've not admits a value judgment word, but where we see that we've done these things wrong and we're going to stop it. And that came after years of people like Dr. Payne, who is 2 years my senior. So she's 79, and she's been an educator for over 50 years, and is both in the classroom and in other administrative things. And so there's been, she related the long struggle. And then we really were focused a lot on what that meant for not just teachers and for the school system, but what it meant for us as individuals, what we lost when we didn't address those particular problems and what could change. So actually it was, for me, it was very, I thought it was a very useful exchange, the importance of having all the stakeholders at the table with a voice, the importance of respecting people and instead of blaming them, and figuring out ways, actual ways that you could have a program that had goals, but also had a way of evaluating them. For example, they will originally have every person in the Indianapolis Public Schools attend these equity workshops by, Dr. Payne said by, there was a word she used which really came out to be, you have to do it. You can volunteer, but you're gonna have to do it. And she described in the meeting how people changed as the information was.
So yeah, it's the most dangerous time we've seen at any point in the pandemic, I think.
So why are we going back to school? Like, I'm just confused.
I was gonna ask the same question. It seems like this is the most dangerous time, and yet we're still at level 5 opening. Kids are going back to school. I see more and more people sort of not taking it seriously, is what I'm sort of observing anecdotally.
Yeah, so, the transition to stage 5, I think psychologically sent the message to a lot of people that, oh, things must be better. We wouldn't be moving forward.
Yeah.
I think it's led to a lot of people being just a little more relaxed in their adherence to any mitigation strategies. And we put out guidance for return to school back in July. The governor came out with his guidance a month or so later, and the CDC even a month after that. Both of those are more permissive than what we articulated for the county. And so I think, the schools, I think everyone agrees, yes, it would be ideal to have kids in person for education. And so I think schools partly were emboldened because the governor's guidance was much more permissive than what we had in the county, and yet things have spiraled out of control. Fortunately in the schools, we're seeing, we first saw some scattered cases scattered among a lot of different schools. Now we're beginning to see multiple cases in the same school, and that's concerning. And I'm worried with the arrival of flu season that we're just going to have a lot of absenteeism for both students and teachers and staff. That's going to make it really difficult to operate. So if we're still in person after Thanksgiving, I honestly will be shocked.
Well, it makes me think of something that's been going on, me being a student at Holy Cross, the sort of the tri-campus response to the virus, and more specifically Notre Dame really has kind of got me thinking about, one, I do have a question of like how Notre Dame specifically being open is impacting the area around it, especially South Bend. But from my perspective, whenever there are spikes across the street from us, especially initially when it was really bad, the administration at Notre Dame was just on the warpath to find every way possible to blame the students for it. Now, yeah, supposedly there, it began with the house party, and then spread to the rest of the campus. But I guess my issue with that is that, well, if your plan to keep the school safe relied on college students not being college students, then you had a bad plan to begin with, and talking about how, how people are starting to get the sense that that we're through it, that the worst is over and that things are on the up.
These other things are so important to us. So it's where you were born, how you live, how you relate to people. So when we think how you age, how you get food, all those things are so important, especially in communities, because people don't always understand that. And if we're talking about anything from a community basis, we need to let people know that these things affect your overall outcome of your health. And we didn't even mention your mental health. So people always think about their health, but they don't think about their mental health. And we need to get conversations going, right, for all different age groups, so they know what the relationship is to all those things. Whether or not you have crime in your actual neighborhood, all those kinds of things. Can you get to the grocery store? Can you go outside to walk? Is it safe? And so I think if we're going to talk about these kinds of things, we need to kind of know about that and maybe learn more about that in a more like a community way. Because see, it was even difficult for us to to give a real clear definition of it. But it's just really just basically.
I think that might be one of your action items, though, is knowing what social determinants of health are actually in each of your neighborhoods.
Okay.
And how do they impact the people in your neighborhood? Like, do you have a bus stop where somebody can catch the bus?
Right.
Food desert.
Right.
Because in my neighborhood, we don't have a bus stop. We don't even have a bus. Like, the bus doesn't come to my neighborhood. So
right, the bus doesn't come to my neighborhood either. So
I live up by you, so I know.
Oh, do you? Right. Right. So can we even get downtown from?
Exactly. So can they get right?
Really?
So you there's no transportation up here. So
yeah, right. Yeah, there's nothing. So yeah, but that's very interesting. And just talking about that.
In health insurance, how easy is health insurance? I mean, it's pretty difficult if you don't know to try to get health insurance. To navigate the system of health insurance is extremely difficult. And then once you have health insurance, figuring out who takes your health insurance. So,
right.
Most people don't get it.
Right.
And also kind of treating these things as health, though. So Debbie, your role as a community health worker, I mean, it's newish since the 70s, but it's growing more and more to, you're part of the health team. We have community health worker who knows some about disease management, but not as much as knowing how to get housing. And this is what this group does. So how do we get housing? How do we get you an insurance navigator? How do we do those other things that matter when I'm trying to treat whatever?
Right.
I know all that other stuff is in the background, but that's not part of my 15-minute appointment.
Right. And it's very interesting that you even said that, because I just became certified as a community health worker. All right, so I used to sell pharmaceuticals in my earlier life. I sold medical instruments, I sold medical equipment, and I was always good about changing doctors' minds about things. And so now I want to use that energy to try to help the community, right, learn more about how we can self-manage. And even though I'm not really a community health worker employed by that, but just knowing, everything starts with your sphere of friendships, right? So if your whole group, if your group knows how to get insurance, or your group knows where to go to the bus stop. It's very, very interesting how the word of mouth, especially in small communities like South Bend, growing up here, everybody knew everybody when there were just 3 high schools, things like that. And now, I don't know, since people are always using computers, and because of COVID, we've also forgotten how to connect, especially with our younger folks. And
What is a community health worker? Are we all on the same page on the understanding of what a community health worker technically is and technically does? Is there someone that can help us have a collective mind there?
So a community health worker is a certified person that puts together the health and the social issues for patients or either clients. So kind of like putting together, just like you said, getting you to your doctor and getting you all those, taking care of those social needs. But I had just been volunteering over the past 10 or 12 years in my community, trying to let people know about diabetes and chronic diseases. But I think, is it Joelle? Was it Joelle or Jackson? I think she is specifically a practicing.
JL.
JL. Yeah, for the
health department. She's the community worker. Yeah.
Yeah, she is.
Michael, do you work with them at all, or Leah?
We do. Yeah, that's part of a lot of FQHCs do. The idea being to get someone who's an intermediary to a certain extent, someone who understands the health world, understands where that plays, but also can communicate better on that patient level that sometimes we just screw up and miss. So I mean, it's that integration that's essential to say, like, you know, my patients live in community. They're not, you know, a A1C or a potassium level. They're ingrained in the community. You're not going to take your water pill if you don't have running water. So I mean, it's that kind of stuff, and understanding that, and maybe taking the time, but asking the question, why aren't you doing that really? Your refrigerator's not working. So do we need to do a different type of insulin? How can we talk to the gas company about, you know, you need power for life-saving stuff, for your oxygen? How do we prioritize getting yours turned back on? So whatever community needs there are, and I use my community health worker for a bunch of coordination of care. So it's not necessarily these are the things you do. It's this patient has needs that intersect with what you do, and you're an intelligent person who can go about trying to connect the dots.
Mm-hmm. It's literally about health of individual people.
Yeah, and the community. I mean, I think the community part's more important.
Heard.
So really integrating.
Yeah, all of that still is the social determinants of health. I mean, really, whatever that is. Yeah.
So
how
would this person ever get connected to another person? Where does that happen?
Well, so if they're at a doctor's office, it's the patients. They're working with the patients of that doctor. At my office, we work with, you know, everyone who's HIV positive or those people who are coming in to get tested. We would be assisting those. So it's at that community, and then you're doing the referrals to other communities or other organizations.
So Leah, you have a community health worker at your facility?
Well, we don't call them community health workers, but yes, essentially, almost all my staff.
But help me square that away. You said we don't call them that. There's a lot there.
Well, we call them a care coordinator. We call them a medical case manager. We call them a retention and care. They all have a linkage to care. There's a variety of names you can call them, but essentially they do the same work. They're meeting the client where they're at, asking them, why are you not getting this health? Why are you not taking your medication? What is it that you need? You're meeting the client where they're at, and you're asking them what needs do they have, and then you're helping them to get those services so that they can become compliant with their health care.
It's interesting. This is around literal like body health, right? Like
or mental. A lot of ours is mental health.
Okay,
yeah.
Great.
Now
it's the whole body. You're looking at the whole body of the person.
And so the big problem is that all of your private practice, that when I say private practice, like your big clinics and all those things, they don't have community health workers. So the problem with, like, if you go to a FQHC or, you know, something like that, but if you go to the South Bend Clinic or to your other doctor, there's nobody that assumes that role.
So But if you have a chronic health condition, so like HIV, we travel with you wherever you go. So we go to those appointments with you.
Great.
And if you
That's
have,
great.
diabetes, depending on which health system you use, there used to be the diabetes coordinator who would help you facilitate that stuff too.
But that was the nurse, right? And so
No, there was a diabetes coordinator who was like the community worker for the diabetes.
There was more of that about 5 years, 6 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
And then they kind of lost funding.
Yeah.
But here's the funny thing about that, you guys,
A couple of times.
is that African Americans never did connect with the diabetes education part, right? Because sometimes
Welcome back. Welcome back. Great to have everyone back. That's great. I'm doing my jingle.
Oh, okay. You have to be a certain age to really understand that, right? And I'm trying to figure out because you don't look old enough to know that. Sound like you were singing Welcome Back Carter theme song. Was that what that was?
That was.
Like Nickelodeon reruns or something?
Wow, the ageism is real in this chat.
Yes,
There it is.
all we got, man. We gotta beat you down. No.
So as we transition back here, give everyone a second while Bill and I invite you to tomorrow's topic, Gateway to a Fuller Life. We have 2 breakouts again tomorrow, Thursday night. The first one is I'm okay, you're okay. Mind, body, and soul is what we're focusing on there. And sharpen your saw and thrive. That's more about work and job placement, resume kind of stuff. We started here at the NRC a Patreon. It's like patronage. So when you go and you buy a coffee every day, you're giving money to that company. We started a Patreon so that people can give to our programming. So it's patreon.com/move South Bend. And there are different levels you can commit at. We invite people to head over there and support. So thanks. Thank you to these supporters again, our sponsors of NRC and the Summit. And we'd now like to do a recap. So this is where we'd like to invite people up and gives everyone an opportunity to hear from the small breakouts, what was shared, action items that we'd like to document or be a part of. And at the same time, be listening to what other people were doing and talking on and action items they came up with. So I invite someone to kick us off and share a golden nugget from your small group sessions. gonna have to be you, Bill.
Jasmine, why don't you talk? Because you had some great ideas. And are you there?
Here. Oh, yes, I am here. I apologize. In our small group, Bill contended that we didn't really talk about health, but then came around to understand that we did talk about health when it came in respects to education and what that means to community. And we talked about the disparities within a system and how money is allocated in one way as opposed in one school as opposed to another, and how that can give detrimental effects, not only in the schools at that time, but how that can have lingering effects that impact community for a long time, right? Thinking that if we have a student that is in 8th grade that reads on a 1st grade reading level, that you're not only disturbing that student at that time, but you're also disturbing a generation, because then they will pass those same and model those same behaviors for their children, which also lends itself to a lack of advocacy, a lack of efficacy. And then we talked about equality versus equity within a system as well. We also, it was also posed, the question to the group says, how do we begin to fix that? Or how do neighbors or community members begin to fix that issue? And we responded with social work, right, in a community. And we talked about social work within our schools as well, and how individuals are trauma filled. And so you're getting past that trauma first. And to make sure that people vote, they invest their money in their educational system. You tend to care a little bit more about where you put when you put your money somewhere, and then also making sure that you build the community, whether that's living there or building the institutions around it to reinforce it and make it stable enough to make sure that education happens for all members.
We also talked about, organizations working together, being able to interface with each other more, having neighborhood organizations interface closely with the institutions that are in their neighborhood and the schools. So we talked about that. So I think they're all great ideas. My idea is to do a dashboard with every institution, organization in the whole city, and so that people can interface and find out what people are doing. Because I think a lot of people don't know what other people are doing. And what other organizations or institutions that they can interface with. So that's my action item.
Todd, I just heard Bill say dashboard.
I can imagine that.
Todd said dashboard in his breakout.
We talked about a couple of different dashboards. So whether it is student reading level, I'm looking at one now that shows the percent of calls answered. There's another that shows on my wall where buses are. So we do use dashboards. And so we use Department of Health dashboard. So putting all those together, I think is a great idea.
Well, I think, Bill, what we had talked about was one time was, rather than calling it dashboard, was asset mapping, which is this, but actually like looking at social justice issues and creating a site where people can fill in their information, and we can see it just kind of grew out of the concept that we're all kind of working in our own little bubbles sometimes, and we're so busy doing the work that we do, and it's really good work, and it might be helping. What was Grant talking about, those starfish? And we feel like we're all alone, but if there was something that was even a visual where everybody who was working on homelessness, the more that added to that, the bigger that little cloud would grow. So people can begin to see, wow, it's not just me, and look at all of the great work that's happening around homelessness or education or, whatever those things are, and then begin to connect among those things. This was out of again, this idea of RJ circles. I mean, so many organizations in our community are working and using that circle format. And what if we did this together? What if it was more connected? How could we use that as a way to reduce violence by building peace, as we've talked about? So yeah, you just need a little money. Again, let's rework those resources and make it happen together.
You know, Maggie Gibney worked for a while with the United Way, and her job was what they were trying to do is to get one place where where you could go to that one place and find out who was doing what. What you're talking about, Regina, is a little bit even more than that, but that I think we should talk to Maggie and find out what they were doing at the United Way and see if that could be a basis for because I've heard a number of people say we should have this and they're working on it, but none of it has come to fruition of one site that we could go to. We need to have an interactive site so that you get it up, but then as people create their own little programs, they can put it on too, you know, on the website or wherever it's going to be. But we need to get beyond people saying we should do this and each one doing their own little thing. I think it's a wonderful.
We priced out we need about $20,000. Who's ready?
Wait,
Just get it done.
let's back up. We can do this tonight. That's not a thing. I do want to fast forward the conversation on resources and community calendars. Community lists are kind of the bane of cities across the world.
Sure.
Because making it is easy. Honestly, making it is the easy part. It is getting people to know that it's a thing that exists that you can use, that you can go to, right? So what's the URL or what's wherever it's housed, right? How do you access it? But then how do you keep it updated? Those are the actual issues. Is I can make a thing tonight. How are people going to get there? And how are we going to keep those statistics updated? It's not enough to do a study now and put the results up now. We have to do studies every week, every month, every quarter, every year. And those have to make it onto XYZ, whatever it is.
Well, and it's also an issue of silos still. I mean, if we're talking about like this social justice map, well, if NRC takes it up, then, well, last night, one of the things that came up was the infighting, like even among people who have similar goals, whether it's social justice, whatever. Oh, well, NRC is doing it, then I don't want anything to do with it. You know what I'm saying? Like all of that kind of little crazy stuff. Like if we're ever really going to make progress, we have to like get over ourselves, you know? And so that's why when we were saying like the school, city, community compact, that there could be something that's shared. And it really does, because honestly, whenever anything happens, the first thing I hear people say, well, who's doing it? As if like, well, depending on who's doing it, then I'm going to engage, you know? So we need to definitely start figuring out how to truly become a community and put some of those petty things aside and keep justice at the center, keep children at the center, whatever we decide is at the center, and focus on that.
Yeah, I would just chime in and say this stuff has been tried before, and that's not to say it can't succeed in the future. But I know it was United Way or whoever years and years ago had a resource guide that wasn't maintained. Then there was another independent organization that tried about 15 years ago, 10 that couldn't keep it maintained. So there is that situation, and you're right about the silos and so we end up with a lot of redundancy too. So we take a lot of resources that are scattered, and instead of all being focused together toward an end, everybody's scattered doing their own little thing, and it's not as productive as if Regina said everybody's kind of focused, working on the same thing together. So we need to break down the silos and stop some of the redundancy, because we have too few resources, both financially and people power, to make these things happen. If we keep doing it this way, we could do so much more if we could do what Regina was talking about.
Agreed. Yes.
But I think that's one of the problems is as the funding sources are cutting back and drying up, you've got more and more agencies going after the same pot of gold. That doesn't promote partnership. Trust me. If I'm vying with 20 other organizations for the same amount of money for my programs as they are for theirs, I'm not going to sit there and say, let's all get together and sing Kumbaya. I'm going to try and think of a way that I can outsmart them because it's my program. So
Well,
what do we do to stop that?
Well, absolutely. And that's why I say, you know, there's just a lot of redundancy. I mean, I remember when NRC years ago was giving out those Inspire grants, which are, you know, up to $5,000 for a neighborhood with a good idea that might be replicable in other neighborhoods. Well, a lot of the people that would come to apply for those grants are people that wanted to start their own nonprofit. And it was probably something similar to another nonprofit that already existed, but they thought they could do it better. So how do we stop that mindset? I don't know. And I think part of it is because people need jobs. There's too many people without incomes. So they're trying to find work. That's how I saw it then. And that was, you know, 10 years ago. And it's even worse now with people that can't find jobs. So they're trying to start a nonprofit. They're trying to do anything to find an income.
I think a lot of these issues that you're talking about in terms of how nonprofits are operating and cooperating are similar to what I saw in academic research labs. You're working on soft money, and so everyone's kind of cutthroat because they need the funds. It works really well if you have an organization that has a good income stream on the side. So a research lab where a professor's got a 20-year project that's long-term monitoring, and he's always going to have enough money for at least one grad student. He's always going to have at least one teaching assistant available. Those are the ones where they can have that continuity. So they're not just relying on an intern that'll be there for 6 weeks and then be gone, and then there's no one to train the next intern on what the first one did. So you lose that continuity. You're starting out from scratch over and over again. So I think that's where things like Boys and Girls Club work out well, because there's that kind of continual income stream. But if you don't have it, it's cutthroat and it's difficult, and soft money is scary because somebody's relying on an income to put food on their own table.
Wouldn't it be cool if we'd invested in cooperative businesses that would actually give people real jobs that build their wealth, but then also, because it's a cooperative business that's been invested in by the city, that a percentage of that goes to whatever this nonprofit, you know what I'm saying? Like, there could be many businesses like that. So the money is being kind of recycled into the work, right? The nonprofit work or the social justice work feeds the new business, but the business also has a commitment to give back and feed. I don't know, that's what your comment made me think about.
Right. We've talked about that before,
Yeah. We talk about a lot, Bill. When are we gonna do something, Bill?
Yeah.
It's funny when you say
a lot too.
Soft money, I hear that. And when you take the focus of the other direction, the hard money that is directly connected to a program, it's like what you're saying, Regina, we need to actually do things. And if you say, this is what we're doing and we're going to receive money for it, like the Boys and Girls Club does, they have services and programs and they receive money for those services and programs. It almost makes more sense instead of doing it the other way. It's like, we need to do stuff, so we're going to do it. Let's put our money where our mouth is and do those things we need to do.
Right. I mean, what if it was like, if it was a business like a grocery store? I don't know, I'm making something up.
Right.
A grocery store, like, everybody knows that this grocery store, you know, puts money back into the community. So I'm going to definitely go to that grocery store because I'm going to spend my money that I know it's going back into the community. I mean, nothing wrong with Meijer. I like Meijer. I shouldn't say I like Walmart because my activist friends will beat me. No, but you know what I'm saying? Like, how can we invest in these local businesses that reinvest, right? Like BrewWorks. Are they not awesome? Like all those people that supported this summit. It's great.
Here for good.
Is Kia still on the Zoom?
She is.
Kia?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, could you present your idea?
My idea?
Mm-hmm.
Say what?
You know, genius comes and goes, Marilyn. Well,
Okay.
Go ahead.
The youth school board.
Oh, yeah, so I brought this up just in a side conversation during the first breakout session that I wanted to see a youth school board. I have children that voice concerns all the time about school, and I've taught them to use their voice, but they don't really have an outlet to use the voice, and so I would like to see something that is more inclusive, all encompassing of all of the schools. And then have the middle schools serve as a pipeline into the high schools. So if you have two students from each school represented on that board, they can work in conjunction with the Youth Advisory Council, because right now our Common Council and our school board is working together on efforts. It only makes sense for those kids to work on the same items as well, so they can make suggestions to the school board. I don't see how we can continue to serve children and we're not listening to the children. And so I would very much like to see something like that. I know that Rudy did share with our group about the thought leadership clubs that's within each of the schools. So I would love to hear more about that, because maybe that is a gateway into this thing that I keep saying, but I think that needs to be a reality. I think that needs to happen. And if we need to look at other maybe school districts or anybody that may already have something like this in place, then we need to do that. Because right now, I feel like we're trying to dictate to our kids what they need and we're not listening to what they need.
One of the things I would share at the beginning of the session, I talked about how when I went to this leadership camp, and that leadership camp, it was in its infancy. It was the Inland Empire Future Leaders Program. It was just starting. So who they had running the show was teachers, like I said, community members. But as the years went along, we started taking those leadership roles. So then we became the peer counselors, we became the graduate assistants, we became the facilitators, and believe it or not, we became the directors. So I recall that when I went to that camp, the person that was the executive director of the conference, the one that ran the show, was a senior in high school. And then as we started developing, then I was the director of that conference when I was in college. And so then you actually had a greater impact with the students as far as like what I was talking about before. Well, if he could, the other part that I didn't talk about was that if this high school student can go up there and wow me and speak to 100 students and tell us about how we need to engage and be involved in the community and run for office and go to college. If the high school student is telling me this, then what's my excuse? And so I've always been a strong proponent of youth. I mentioned before that I work in immigration. Let's face it, right? When we started seeing change in policy with DACA and Dreamers and all that, it wasn't because a lot of us that were already in advocating for these issues, we were talking about it, but we weren't seeing change. I mean, I'm not to discredit all the hard work that the community, that immigration advocates have done throughout the country. But when you really started seeing it is when you started seeing youth getting involved, right? Because they grew up in our systems, they knew how to use technology, they were savvy with social media, they were willing to sacrifice themselves. I don't know if many of you know this, but there were 6 undocumented high school students that went down there in their graduation robes and intentionally crossed the border, went back to Mexico and intentionally got themselves arrested so that this action would take place. And so when I mentioned all that to share with you that when we had the Thought Leadership Conference, that when we were working with Dr. Sutton and the members of her team, they were talking about, like, at first we were going to do it just for South Bend schools. And then we said, you know what, this isn't just about South Bend schools. This is about our community. And so they opened it to anybody that was a student in South Bend within the Michiana area. And so if you could have been there, it was 2 hours on a Wednesday, I think it was Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It was 2 hours or maybe about 3 hours. We did the exact same thing we're doing right now. We had a keynote speaker, and then we broke up into small groups, and then we came back and we let the students do the talking. And that's how this idea of a youth council, of a thought leadership club came. It was from that conference. And so I'm all for youth voice. In fact, when we had the Common Council, the joint Common Council meeting along with the school board, I mentioned that at the meeting, that we should have a youth representative. But I like what we're hearing tonight, that it should be beyond that. There should be a youth board, because I absolutely believe that we should be hearing our students, and that, you know, you just let a student speak, and you don't make any judgment calls, and you'll be wowed by what they said. You know, Holly Swartz was conducting a project that many of you may have seen on the internet with their 5th graders. This is over at Kennedy. And they invited me to speak to them about the importance of getting involved and getting out the vote and running for office. I wasn't the one doing the teaching that day. It was the 5th graders that were teaching me. I was so inspired just speaking to them. And these were 5th graders. They were telling me, like, well, why is it that people don't vote? That's the question I posed to them. They said they didn't vote because they have issues with transportation. Maybe they have to work. Maybe they can't get to work. And then they were talking about, well, how do we get out the vote? It's like, well, there's all, you know, when I asked the students that, we're over here struggling with how do we get out the vote? And the students, the 5th graders were like, what are you talking about? There's all kinds of ways. You can use Facebook, you can use Instagram, you can use billboards, you can talk to people, you can call. I was just floored. And so I absolutely agree that we need to be able to give them that place to be able to have students, our youth, be able to voice their thoughts, because we can learn a thing or two from them.
So Rudy, are you saying this is something you support? Kia's saying this is something she wants to do.
Yeah, that's excellent. I absolutely support it. It's excellent. You know, I mentioned it on the record before when we were in a public meeting. I don't know what needs to take, what steps need to be taken in order to make that happen, but I'm absolutely in support of that.
There you go, Kia.
What I mentioned in our group too, when Kia was talking about it, was I'd like to see that board actually have some voting power. I mean, not just a cute little thing and say, oh, that's a great idea, and then adults go do whatever they want to do. But how can we just blow that up? Why not? All the stakeholders.
I think it sounds like more conversation could be, you guys could have more conversation about it.
You know, one of the things that whenever we visit schools that I always tell every student that I meet, we tell them, we're your representatives and you have a voice. And you know, I don't know if you folks have, I mean, I'm sure people here have been at our school board meetings. We're starting to see that. First of all, we have an agenda. Dr. Cummings, I thank you for making sure that that's part of the agenda. Now we have it's an item on the agenda where we specifically hear something that our students are doing within the South Bend schools. But beyond that, besides the fact that we made that a specific portion of the agenda, is that we're starting to hear from students. Students are sending us board comments at sb.school. I've been reading those as a secretary for the board. I've been hearing from the students, and then I tell them every time we meet them, you can send a comment to board comments at sb.school, and it's unfiltered. But so long as you don't talk about personnel issues, you can say whatever you like. So I stress to them, you can say the good things about it, you can say the bad things about it, or you can just tell us what's happening in your schools. That's important for us to know. And we're starting to see that happen. I mean, I can tell you because I'm the one that reads those. Sometimes we read them for about 5 minutes. Other times we read them for about an hour and a half. But I enjoy reading them because, you know, what's interesting, this is just a side note and I'll stop talking. That's a problem when we have lawyers talk. When I read those comments from the community, it's no joke. I feel like I'm embodying whatever that person is saying, right? I value those words that someone took the time to write to the board. And so that's something that's been unique about what we've been going through this pandemic. And so I am a strong proponent of voice, and any way that we can amplify that and make sure that we hear it, I'm all for it.
Okay, great. And Dr. Fox, we did discuss health in our group. And I think, Diana, you said you would just kind of relay that information to him about something like a 311 number for compliance.
Okay, great.
We were talking about a lot of stores have the information posted about wearing a mask, but some don't require it once you're in the store. If you have a mask or not, you know, there's no penalty. And so we were thinking that possibly there could be some kind of number, a number like 311, where a customer could call that number immediately and report that store to somewhere. And then not that the store would be fined right away, but there would be some type of citation, a visit to the store to try to get them to become more in compliance with the ordinance.
Right.
Yeah, of course, they do have the website and you can do it that way, but if you could just
Well, you could do it website, but we were just saying that it's easier sometimes if it's just something simple, like a two-digit number. Mhm.
If I could just interject on that, because I do work retail and I have customers on a daily basis, we are allowed to inform them and express, but we cannot enforce it to the point that they're going to get violent with us. So there is a catch-22 on that. I've been approached by many. I show them the box of masks that we offer them. They refuse it on various points. We can't go past that. I can't insist that they put it on because we can't ask them their health or this or that. So there are, in a retail setting, as part of management, we are limited as to what we can do to the customers that are coming in without a mask on.
However, Menards will not check.
Menards will not allow you in.
If you don't have a mask on, you don't get to check.
You don't shop. And I've gone into, I was in a store just the other day and that happened. And they said, here, we have a mask for you. If the person didn't want to put the mask on, they couldn't shop there.
Yeah, and we get some that'll wear them in and then pull them down as soon as they get past you. So again, they'll pull it down while they're shopping and then put it back up to check out.
All right, it is 8:33. Thanks so much for making it all the way through. We actually have retention from beginning to end, so much appreciated. All the love and grace to all of you. Stay healthy. We will stay on for a couple more minutes with some folks who want to stay on. Those of you who need to drop off, have a great night. Thanks so much for being in attendance, and look forward to the roundtables.
Yes, thanks for everyone.
Thank you.
Guys, this was a wonderful session.
Yes, thank you.
Debbie?
Good night, everybody.
And then there were 7.
So we're going.
What's up, man?
I see that Debbie's on, but she's muted, right?
Yeah.
So
Someone
what-
asked, oops, sorry.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
No, someone asked a really good question, Dylan. I just wanted to be sure that we capture that so we can reach out to him about teachers unions role and support initiatives. So I just wanted to be sure that somebody saw that.
Thanks. I'm throwing that on the Miro.
Sweet.
Dylan, our intern?
Dylan, our intern. Go, Dylan.
So Rudy, how would you, is that Kia, is that something you want to work on with Rudy, or?
I'm willing to do whatever I need to do. I'm definitely just a parent. First, I'm a parent and then everything else comes after that, you know? And like I said, I know that there's other parents that has given their children the ability to have voice and to be able to share their knowledge and their information with those that are in a position of power, you know? And whatever that looks like, I'm all for it, you know? Like Rudy shared a couple of different things. Yeah, I would love to learn more about what is going on in the schools. I would definitely love to know more about, you know, that the conference, because I hadn't heard anything of it. So I'm curious to know how kids are chose for it and things of that nature. But I think allowing our kids, you know, to have a platform to really show us and show others that they know more than what they let on. You know what I mean? And I'm just all for it. You know, whether I'm a part of it or not, as long as it happens, that's all I care about. But yeah.
Rudy, just to piggyback, Kia is our board president here at NRC, and I'm the executive director. So I want you to hear from us that we love what you're doing.
Absolutely.
You know, like the idea that you're taking what you had an experience of, you participated in one as an adult, you're now trying to implement that in schools. We want to help build on that. So we feel very confident that what you're doing makes sense and that we can help.
And how can we, how can we as an NRC support, you know, those efforts really?
I think that's what Dale was saying earlier, is that it's one thing to have an idea, but what do you do next? What are the next steps?
I mean, one of the big things I think that we do with our program EYEN, Engaging Neighbors, is
Bill, you're breaking up.
Oh, sorry. Engaging Youth, Engaging Neighbors is that, you know, we try to help students develop their voice. But there's certain students that don't really have a voice or don't know how to express themselves with the thoughts they have. So with that program, it's an art-based program where they actually try to get a voice and write poetry, create art, and to develop their voice. Which then,
and what's been a challenge for NRC, we have this amazing program that we cannot find children for. Like, we've tried to get it into South Bend schools. We even tried the empowerment zone, and it's like not even a thing. And we're just trying to get 15 kids.
Kia, when you did that program, have you been successful in at least having the program run one time, or?
Not this year. So in the past, it started off as a Notre Dame like research program that they did for X amount of years. And then once the funding was gone, you know, it was going to be discontinued, and we were given permission to continue to have it. And so what we've done is, over the last, you know, year, is secure funding to specifically have this program happen, which is phenomenal. I mean, and we're just having a hard time with finding the children. There's plenty of work that you can go back and see of past EYEN classes. Pictures, you've probably seen them in the city hall, because they're always put in different places to display. But what we've done is elevated it from where it was to include things like poetry and art-based things, and even down to, you know, maybe potentially having the students print their own work and display their work, and be able to talk to community members about how they view us, how they view the city of South Bend, what impact, you know, they would like to see happen. And then that particular class, EYEN, is supposed to feed into the Youth Advisory Council.
Right.
So here we are with all this great knowledge that we're looking, we can't get 15 kids to sign up for the program.
But the reason I ask is because that was the exact same thing that happened with that organization that I was involved with. And that was that nobody wanted to go. And if you, you know, this is what, the 80s. And they were talking about taking your son, and these were immigrant families, and they were saying, what do you mean you're going to take this child up in the mountains for about a week? And so what ended up happening is a lot of the folks that were involved had their children go, right? So it's like, okay, you're going, you don't have a choice, you're going. And so then the kids went, and so literally you would see, it's funny when I think about this, because I know that there's pockets of families that we know that are involved with the organization, have always been involved, right? And I became one, right? It was I went, then my brother went, and because they saw what an impact they had on me. So I think the key thing is maybe we get our own children, or somebody that's on the board, their children, so be voluntold, like what we just heard earlier today, they go. And then once they see what a tremendous impact that it makes a big difference, now they get to tell the story and say, hey, this is why you should get involved. And then of course, once you already go through the program, then allow that student take a leadership role, as in, okay, now this person is going to be the peer counselor, or this person is going to be the graduate assistant, like, and give them ownership. And then that fashion, it just starts replicating amongst the youth themselves. But mostly because somebody already went through it, thought it was great, and then from there, but the challenge is to be consistent, right? Because I remember that this program, we've actually started in different areas throughout California and even here in Chicago. So but the thing is that you need to have somebody who's willing to make the sacrifice and that's going to watch it year long, and it's a job. And some people do it out of the goodness of their heart, that it means so much to them that they're like, okay, I'm going to do it. But as soon as that person isn't able to do it, then all of a sudden you need to find someone else to take the mantle. And when somebody else isn't there to take the mantle, then it falls apart. That's what happened with Future Leaders in Chicago. It was Sulema Perez, who now is the assistant over at Northeastern Illinois University, I think was the title of the university. They did it for about 3-4 years, and after that, they couldn't sustain it, so it stopped. In Central California, it was a Central Coast Future Leaders program, and we started. I remember that I went there. This was in '95 that I went to go start that conference, and they went for about 3 years, and they stopped because they didn't have the funding. And so then another organization, which is the one that we broke off from a long time ago, Future Leaders of America, they took them on, and because they already had the structure, they have an executive director that's being paid.
Nice.
They've had years of doing this, that now they're able to have made sure that chapter still existed. So it's about what we were talking about earlier today: resources, funding, and also that people power, right? People that are willing to still continue to volunteer and to continue to work. That's the other thing that I didn't mention before, that with this conference, nobody gets paid. Everybody that participates in that conference for that week does it volunteer. And so that's why we're able to get all this talent and this commitment. The reason you have this commitment is because everybody on there, myself, right? It made such a profound impact on my life that I want someone else to have that same opportunity. And so I think that's
It's like the student, you have a student buy-in. So with the students that have graduated from the previous programs that you guys had, Bill, where are they?
They're around town. Yeah, I mean, we reached out to some of them, but yeah, it would be great to get them involved too. They could be the mentors that, would help keep the program. They know the program.
So would they be helpful at recruiting?
Possibly, yeah.
And just as a FYI, Rudy, I do have 2 of my 3 children was voluntold, and they are definitely signed up for the program. But we really, we just want to be a capacity. You know what I mean? Like, we do have children that is enrolled in the program, but really want to just maximize the experience. It is in a virtual setting, so it took us some time to convert that over into a virtual platform, which was not the easiest, but, they received their cameras and all the necessary tools that they need to be successful, at the program. All they need is internet access, which the school board has graciously given, so.
And I think what I'm hearing is, the thing is, like, I would tell you that Dr. Cummings really does listen to those of us that are on the board and listens to the community. I think that if you get also buy-in from the corporation, right? Because the corporation has access to all these students, or I shouldn't say access, but we're able to communicate to all these students, right? So if we go off and we tell them, look, this is something that you can get involved with. And then the other thing, what they did with the Thought Leadership Conference is that, my firm sponsored it. I went up and I talked to a friend of mine, Isaac Torres. I said, hey, you need to sponsor this. He sponsored it, and they got other sponsors.
Of course.
And everybody that participated in this Thought Leadership Conference received a certificate. And if they committed to be able to go all 3 days, we gave them a scholarship. We gave them a $200 scholarship. And for those that weren't able to be there all 3 days, they still got a gift certificate of $50 or $100. I forget how much it was. So there was some incentive, right? But the other thing about it was just that you just made it seem, and it was, like something to be proud of, something that they could put on their resume, something that they could share on Facebook, right? We had these long, we had a blown up check. Well, and I say we, but it was Dr. Sutton's team. They blew up a check, put the sponsors on there. It says, Thought Leadership Conference, $200, and we took pictures with them, and so they were happy, they were pleased. You spread that message. So I guess all that to say that that sounds to me like something that the school board, that the South Bend School Corporation could get behind, right? To be able to get those students. And then, and I'm thinking,
Which program
even
are we talking about?
the program that you folks have. And
EYEN.
Okay, okay.
yeah. And then there we could probably even recruit from the students that participate in the Thought Leadership Conference, because they already went through a conference, loved it, and you know, that's what I remember. And many of you here may have the same experience. As soon as I went to that camp, Future Leaders, then I went to Boy State, I went to Hobie, I went to CASC, you know, the California Association of School Leadership Team. I went to all these different conferences, because all of a sudden I started meeting other people that liked this, that liked engaging in activism and leadership training, and it was fun to be able to meet other students that wanted to do more than just go to school. And so I think that we could probably tap into those people that are already participating in that program to participate in this one that you folks are talking about.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
And then all of a sudden you develop those lifelong relationships. On Saturday, I'd share with you that I'm going to be hosting a virtual Halloween dance party that you're all welcome to join. And it's literally just to celebrate our teachers, our parents, and our students, something positive in light of everything that's been happening.
Are you here in South Bend?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's going to be virtual to be able to be safe. And I tapped into a friend of mine that I met at a conference it was the Chicano Latino Youth Leadership Project in Sacramento. It was in 1989 and 90. And now she's a director of the business school at Berkeley. And she's going to be my host on Saturday. And we started this friendship because we both went to this conference in Sacramento when we were juniors and seniors in high school, and still kept that relationship even now. And you don't know where people are going to end up.
Exactly.
Well, I just wanted to thank you, Rudy, for all of your hard work and efforts. And I hope that, you know, you continue to serve, you know, on the board going forward, because you do show a passion for the kids, and it's a genuine thing, and it's very noticeable. So thank you again for coming on this evening, and I've seen your face a couple of different times on the candidate forums and all that good kind of stuff. So
yeah.
I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. That means a lot to me. It's my I guess it's my calling to be able to serve. So I do it with joy and in honor of those that came before me.
That's awesome.
Rudy was an excellent president for La Casa de Amistad as well when I was on the board over there. So he's done a lot of different kinds of volunteer things that are serving the community.
Mm-hmm.
But Rudy, I voted early and I voted for you.
Oh,
yeah, me too.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So Rudy, I'll send you the program information.
That sounds great. I'd be happy to support in any way that I can.
Great. Thank you.
All right, guys. I gotta eat.
I gotta eat too. Sorry,
I gotta put out my trash.
Oh yeah, us
now
too.
I gotta stop. See how
So good night.
You all.
Good night.
Thank
Good night, all of you.
everyone.
Good night.
Bye bye.